Good afternoon, students. Today's class we are going to discuss about federalism. See, previous lesson in the power sharing, we noted that how in a democratic system and as well as in a different countries, how the system of power sharing existed. Especially, dear students, in a democracy, there we studied the vertical division of power sharing, vertical division of power sharing, that is about governments at different level. And also we learnt about the horizontal division of power sharing, that is about the power of the government shared between the different organs of the government. So already I told that in a democratic system, so where the power is shared among different levels of the government or at a different, maybe more than one level of the government, that used to called as a federal system. Are you getting, dear students? So it's a very simple. Federalism is the existence of the government in a democratic system where the power of the government distributed at different levels of the government. For example, in our country, the government existed at a different level, such as central government, state government, and also local self government. So, in this chapter, we are going to focus more on the federalism. That understood. See, we began by describing federalism in general terms in this chapter. So, especially in our country, in India. Are you getting now? So, let us start to discuss about the federalism. Now, let us know about what is federalism. Of course, I told that the existence of the government more than one level. Of course, dear students. See, now we'll continue about what is federalism. What is federalism? Let us get back to the contrast between which we learned in Belgium and Sri Lanka, that we saw in the and we are discussed in the previous chapter. See, just you can try to remember that. So one of the key changes made in the constitution of Belgium, for what? To reduce the power of the central government. To reduce the power of the central government. That we observed, we noted that. And by reducing the power of the central government, that powers to give to the especially regional governments or state governments, which are the powers reduced. That means here more autonomy given to the state or the regional governments. See, a regional government existed in Belgium even earlier also, but they had their roles and powers. They had their roles and powers. So here, all these powers were given to these governments, and could be withdrawn by the central government. So whatever in the earlier had given, so all those actually withdrawn by the central government. The change that took place in 1993 was that the regional governments were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. So after 1993, so what happened? The regional governments were given constitutional powers that were no longer dependent on the central government. Thus, Belgium shifted from a unitary to a federal form of government. Getting dear students. So, before in Belgium they were followed the unitary government. Then after actually they were shifted from a unitary to a federal form of the government. And also dear students, we studied the system of the government, even the Sri Lanka, how they were. See, Sri Lanka continues to be for all practical purposes. All practical purposes. A unitary system where the national government has all the powers. So there we can observe that we studied that here completely the power of the government rests with the national government. The power of the government rests with the national government. Almost all the powers. Then afterwards, the Tamil leaders want to become and they were demanded a federal system. So the Tamil leaders want Sri Lanka to become a federal system. See, federal is a system of government. Already I told very clearly, federalism is a system of government in which the power is divided between a central authority and various constituent units of the country. That means if the system of government existed in more than one level at a different level, so that used to called as a federal system. Usually, dear students, a federation or a federalism has two levels of the government. Usually, even we can see more than two levels of the government also. For example, in India. So in India, there are the three tiers. The government is existed in three tiers or the three levels, such as central, state, and as well as local self-governments. See, one is the government for the entire country. So actually here the power divided is like that. So there is the government that's for the entire country. Understood now? For whole country. For example, India, there is a central government. The central government is there, is work for entire country. That is usually responsible for a few subjects of common national interest. So it's controlling the entire. So ಭಾರತ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸೊ ಅದು ಯಾವುದೇ ಭಾರತದ ಒಂದು ಪ್ರದೇಶಕ್ಕೆ ಸೀಮಿತವಾದಂತಹ ಸರ್ಕಾರ. The government of India represents the entire country. ಇಡೀ ಭಾರತವನ್ನ ಪ್ರತಿನಿಧಿಸ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ, ಇಡೀ ಭಾರತವನ್ನ ನೋಡ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಸೊ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ವ್ಯವಸ್ಥೆಯನ್ನು ನಾವೇನ್ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ಸೊ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತೇಳಿ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. The others government at the levels of the provinces or state, so they were actually look after much of the day-to-day administering of their respective regions. A provincial government ಅಥವಾ ಪ್ರಾದೇಶಿಕ ಅಥವಾ ಈ ಒಂದು ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳೇನಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ, ಸೊ ಈ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳು ತಮ್ಮ ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಪರಿಮಿತಿಯ ಒಳಗಡೆ ತಮ್ಮ ಡೇ ಟು ಡೇ ಅಡ್ಮಿನಿಸ್ಟ್ರೇಷನ್ ಅವು ನಡೆಸ್ತವೆ. ಫಾರ್ ಎಕ್ಸಾಂಪಲ್, ಇಂಡಿಯಾ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಡಿವೈಡೆಡ್ ಇಂಟು ಡಿಫರೆಂಟ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ and each state has their own government. So illi whether the Tamil Nadu, whether the government of Karnataka look after only in that areas day to day administration of that respective state. The government of Karnataka, it is not going to rule or it is not going to extend its administration in Tamil Nadu or in Kerala or like that. ಸೊ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಆಯಾ ಇದನ್ನ ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳು ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ ನಾವು, ಅಥವಾ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಥವಾ ಪ್ರಾವಿನ್ಸಿಯಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಅಂತ ಕರಿತೀವಿ. ಸೊ ಆ ಒಂದು ಭೌಗೋಳಿಕ ಪ್ರದೇಶ ಅವರ ವ್ಯಾಪ್ತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ಅವರ ಅಧಿಕಾರವನ್ನ ನಡೆಸ್ತಾರೆ. ಸಿ ಬೋತ್ ದೀಸ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಎಂಜಾಯ್ ದೇರ್ ಪವರ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅದರ್. Here each and every state they are enjoying their power independently of their own. ಸೊ ಪ್ರತಿಯೊಂದು ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳು ಆ ಒಂದು ರಾಜ್ಯದ ಪರಿಮಿತಿಯೊಳಗೆ ಸೊ ಅವರು ಸಂಪೂರ್ಣವಾದ ಸ್ವತಂತ್ರವನ್ನು ಹೊಂದಿರತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದನ್ನು ನಾವು ಕಾಣ್ತೀವಿ. ದೇ ಆರ್ ವೆರಿ ಫ್ರೀ. ದ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನ್ ಸೊ ಪ್ರೊವೈಡ್ಸ್ ಎವ್ರಿಥಿಂಗ್ and those governments are independent one. They are not actually under the control of any other state government or else those government, I mean the state governments are not under the control of the central governments. Of course ಒಂದಷ್ಟು ಗೈಡ್ಲೈನ್ಸ್ ಗಳನ್ನ ಫಾಲೋ ಅಪ್ ಮಾಡಬೇಕಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಅಕಾರ್ಡಿಂಗ್ ಟು ದ ಕಾನ್ಸ್ಟಿಟ್ಯೂಷನ್. ಬಟ್ ಸೊ ಬೋತ್ ದೀಸ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಎಂಜಾಯ್ ದೇರ್ ಪವರ್ ಇಂಡಿಪೆಂಡೆಂಟ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಅದರ್. ಆರ್ ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್ ನೌ? ಸಿ in this sense federations are contrasted with unitary governments. Federations are contrasted with unitary governments. See, under the unitary system, either there is only one level of the government or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. ಸೊ ಯೂನಿಟರಿ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಥವಾ ಯೂನಿಟರಿ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹೇಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ, ಸೊ ದೇರ್ ಮೇ ಬಿ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಒನ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ ಆಫ್ ದ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಆರ್ subunits are subordinate to the central government. See, the central government can pass on orders to the provincial or the local governments in a unitary system. So central government ಆರ್ಡರ್ ಅನ್ನ ಪಾಸ್ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, ಲಾ ಅನ್ನ ಮಾಡಬಹುದು, ಓಕೆ. ಬಟ್ ವೇರ್ ವಿ ಕ್ಯಾನ್ ಸಿ ದೀಸ್ ಥಿಂಗ್ಸ್ ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ ಎ ಯೂನಿಟರಿ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್, ಓನ್ಲಿ ಇನ್ ಎ ಯೂನಿಟರಿ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಬಿಕಾಸ್ ಹಿಯರ್ ಅಂಡರ್ ದ ಯೂನಿಟರಿ ಸಿಸ್ಟಮ್ either there is only one level of government or the subunits are subordinate to the central government. Subordinate to the central government. Here the central government can pass on orders to the provincial or state in this system. So the central government cannot actually provide the more and more autonomy to the or more power to the provincial or states or the other things. It is the completely. Then this used to called as a unitary system. Then what about in a federal system, dear students? So in a federal system, the central government cannot order the state government to do something. So even the federal system ಏನidiyalla, so a federal system alli central government is not allowed to give any kind of order to the state government. ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರಗಳಿಗೆ ಇದನ್ನ ಕಂಪಲ್ಸರಿ ನೀವು ಫಾಲೋ ಮಾಡಲೇಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ದ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಡು ನಾಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ದಟ್ ಪವರ್. ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಹ್ಯಾಸ್ ಪವರ್ಸ್ ಆಫ್ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಓನ್ ಫಾರ್ ವಿಚ್ ಇಟ್ ಈಸ್ ನಾಟ್ ಆನ್ಸರಬಲ್ ಟು ದ ಸೆಂಟ್ರಲ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್. ಹಿಯರ್ ದ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಆರ್ as a power of its own and even which it is not answerable to the central government. So central government ಗೆ accountable ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು ಅಥವಾ answerable ಆಗಿರಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿಲ್ಲ. So they can take their own decisions in that. So both these governments are separately answerable to the people. But you have to keep it in your mind, in a democratic system, both these levels of the government, whether state government or central government, so both the governments are separately answerable to the people. Got it, dear students? So both the governments are, whether state government or central government, so separately answerable to the people because they are accountable. So let us discuss about some of the important key features of the federalism. What are the key features of the federalism? So the first important one, there are two or more levels or tiers of government. So this is what the first key feature. So there are two or more than two tiers. That means tier ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ level bus tier ಅಂತ government. Got it now? So there are two or more than that we used to call as a federalism. This is one of the important key feature of federal system. There are two or more levels of government. And the second important key features, that is about different tiers of government. Again, I would like to remember tire ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ TIER ಅಂತ ಹೇಳಿದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ನೀವು ವೆಹಿಕಲ್ ಯೂಸ್ ಮಾಡೋ ಟೈರ್ ಅಂತ ಅನ್ಕೋಬೇಡಿ ಮಕ್ಕಳ. ಟೈರ್ ಮೀನ್ಸ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್. ಓಕೆ, tire means level. So here different tiers of government govern the same citizen. So here different tiers of government, but they are govern same citizens. See dear students, the central government also govern the same citizens who are actually, and even the different state government also govern the same citizens, those who are living in that respective states. That means here the different tiers or levels of the governments are govern the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction. Each tier has its own so here in especially here each tier has its own jurisdictions in specific matters of legislation, taxation and even the administration. So ಬಹಳ ಸ್ಪೆಸಿಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿರುತ್ತೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು, ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ legislation, taxation and administration. So this is what the second feature of the federalism. So once again I would like to repeat, the different tiers of government govern the same system, I mean the same citizens, but each tier has its own jurisdiction in specific matters of legislation, taxation and administration. Now let us discuss about the third key feature of the federalism. See, the jurisdictions of the respective levels or tiers of government are specified in the constitution. So ಅವರ ವ್ಯಾಪ್ತಿ ಏನಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, ಅವರ ಒಂದು ಪರಿಮಿತಿ ಏನಿದೆಯಲ್ಲ, so that's completely actually specified in the constitution. The jurisdictions of the respective levels or tiers of the government are specified in the constitution. So the existence and authority of each tier of government is constitutionally guaranteed. So whatever they are exercising, the power or the whatever it may be, so everything The existence and authority of each tier of government is guaranteed by constitution. Are you getting, dear students? Guaranteed by constitution. So this is what the third important key feature of federalism. Then what about the next key feature? See, dear students, the fundamental provisions of the constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government. Cannot be changed by one level of government. That means the fundamental provisions of the constitution. So here, that cannot be unilaterally. ಕೇಂದ್ರ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಒಂದೇ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ರಾಜ್ಯ ಸರ್ಕಾರ ಸೊ ಸಂವಿಧಾನವನ್ನ ಅಥವಾ ಸಂವಿಧಾನದ ಯಾವುದೇ ಒಂದು ಭಾಗವನ್ನ ಸೊ ಅದನ್ನ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡಲಿಕ್ಕೆ ಬರಲ್ಲ. Are you getting, dear students? So it is very clear that the fundamental provisions of the constitution cannot be unilaterally changed by one level of government, whether state or central government. Such changes require the consent of both the levels of the government. ಸೊ ಆ ತರ ಏನಾದ್ರೂ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಯನ್ನು ಮಾಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತಿದ್ರೆ ಸೊ ಆ ಬದಲಾವಣೆಗೆ ಸೊ it should be approved by, it should be accepted by both the levels of the government. ಸೊ ಎರಡು ಹಂತದಲ್ಲಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ಆ ಎರಡು ಟೈರ್ ಅಥವಾ ಮೂರು ಟೈರ್ ಎಷ್ಟಿರುತ್ತ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಲೆವೆಲ್ಸ್ ಸೊ ಅವು ಅಷ್ಟು ಸಹ ಒಪ್ಕೊಳ್ಬೇಕು. Then only the fundamental provisions of the constitutions can change, otherwise it cannot be changed. It is not at all possible by any one level of the government to change the constitution or even the part of the constitution also. And the fifth important key feature of the federalism is, see here, courts have the power to interpret the constitution, and as well as court have the power to interpret on the powers of different levels of the government. That means here the courts are very free to interpret the constitution and as well as the powers of different levels of the government. See, we all know that here the highest court in Indian judiciary system, the highest court act as an umpire. Act as an umpire. So in Indian judiciary system, we all know that Supreme Court is the final court, which is located in the capital city of our country. Okay, see, if disputes arise between any different levels of the government, maybe state government versus central government, or central government versus state government, or any other local governments, so here actually that can be solved by the Supreme Court. So here, whatever it may be, the highest court acts as an umpire. If disputes arise between different levels of the government, of the exercise of their respective powers, so it is going to be solved by the court only. So this is another important key features of the federalism. Now, I would like to explain the remaining key features of the federalism in the next class. Thank you. Have a nice day.